Okay. All right, so now we're recording. Let me start this again. Good evening and welcome to Poolsville Seniors. And you're here tonight with our guest speaker, Barbara Paulson. She's a lifelong learner and travel expert. And this is not her first, her second, but her third time visiting us. So tonight, we're going to learn about Virginia Beach, Off the Beaten Path. We want to thank our sponsor, Colonial Opticians. We want to remind you that we're going to have another in-person program on June 21st at 7 o'clock with Paul Kreingold. And he's going to be at Poolsville Presbyterian Church in the sanctuary that evening, telling us all about the marble quarries, the local marble quarries, and how they contributed to the national monuments. So here we are. I'm going to start to mute you all, except for our speaker. Hopefully I don't do that. So I'm going to mute everybody and then unmute our speaker. And here we go. So Barbara, if you'd like to go ahead and no, she can't yet. Ask to unmute. All right. Okay. So here we all are, and we're ready to start tonight's program. So thank you very much, Barbara Paulson.
Great. Thank you, Maria, for that warm welcome. Glad to join you tonight and talk about some lesser known areas on the coastal Virginia area. And it's not going to be just Virginia Beach. There's going to be a few other areas that I'm going to talk about here. And it's really, these places are not that far away, and all of them are kind of clustered close together. So hope you will enjoy this little virtual trip there. And just want to remind you all that in the chat box, I have uploaded a copy of the handout. So feel free to double click on that to open the handout. And if you have trouble with that, I believe Dottie or someone will be able to send those out to you tomorrow or sometime soon. But if you want to follow along on the handout, feel free to open that up and follow along. Now let's see what else there is along the off the beaten path in coastal Virginia. Now, what I'm talking about tonight will be these kind of areas. Virginia Beach, of course, on the far east, Norfolk and Hampton Roads. But also, I would feel free, I'd be remiss to, because there's lots of fun things and wonderful things to do in Newport News as well. But just before our time tonight, Virginia Beach, Hampton, and Norfolk. You can easily spend, of course, a weekend here, but really a week or more is just barely a taste for all that this area has to offer. The farthest destination, Virginia Beach, is only 4 hours away, so it's not that far. And these are each roughly about a half an hour between them, so you can go back and forth in a day, do something in the morning one place, and travel very fluidly between all of them. So in my usual pattern, if I'm going to do multiple cities, I go to the one farthest away and work my way back. So I'm going to start with Virginia Beach. So of course, at Virginia Beach, you'd be hard pressed to miss the main attraction here, the boardwalk. It's about 3 miles long, and it's really a great boardwalk, very comfortable to walk along for as long as you choose to. Like I said, it's about 3 miles long. There are wonderful hotels and condos along the boardwalk, but kind of blissfully, the restaurants and retail are a block off the boardwalk, which makes it kind of less in-your-face commercial experience than, say, Ocean City. But with just being a block off, you can still get to a restaurant or do a little shopping very easily there. But I really appreciate the solitude of walking along the boardwalk and along the beach here. Now, it's never quite as tranquil, except really early in the morning, as the picture on the left would suggest, but it's much less just commercial than Ocean City. It's different. And there's a separate bike path there too on the shoulder. And they also have bike and Surrey rentals. You just kind of pedal along the boardwalk there, which are kind of fun too. And while you're there, check out on the right-hand side, the famous statue of Neptune. You can't miss it. It's pretty large and in charge. And speaking of statues, there's a cluster of 6 larger than life bronze sculptures at the Naval Aviation Monument Park. Again, right on the boardwalk at 25th Street, that Naval Aviation Monument Park. The statues depicted different historic areas in the naval aviation, which is near and dear to this area. The Norfolk Naval Air Station nearby is the world's largest naval air station, supporting 75 ships and 135 aircraft, alongside 14 piers and 11 aircraft hangars. The public and private tours of the installation are still in flux due to COVID, but keep checking back. They may, they periodically offer them and then they don't. But touring the Naval Air Station there is a lot of fun too. But check out these bronze statues. And on the right there is a woman. Woot woot. She's a Norwegian woman. The monument itself is dedicated to a Norwegian ship captain's wife, whose ship, well, the whole ship was lost, and they were able to rescue most of them, but sadly she did not. The ship foundered at sea and she was lost. And in the interest of ship rescues, there's a surf and rescue museum right there on the boardwalk as well, whose members may long ago have assisted in rescues such as her unsuccessful one. They had many successful ones, I'm sure, but this tiny and humble museum, you can see from the photograph on the left, it's not huge, but it is packed full of very interesting memorabilia and a lot of heart, which I appreciate. It's in a former 1903 home, designated as a National Historic Monument in the U.S. To the U.S. Life Saving Service, which later merged and became the U.S. Coast Guard. In its active days, there was just only a crew of 8 there. The keeper, that was his title, the head person there, and about just 6 to 7 surf and rescue personnel there, and a boat, pretty humble boat there. You can see it on the right-hand side, and some life-saving equipment. A lot of responsibility and not a lot of people to help execute it. It's a really interesting museum. Today, it operates solely on private donations and the passion of its volunteers. It's full of treasures about the local community and, of course, the maritime heritage. One of the artifacts is a clever example of the evolution of maritime warfare history. A swivel gun is shown on the right there, which could not only be tilted up and down, but it could pivot left and right. And it was placed on the deck through different holes on the deck, so you could move it to different locations. It took several men, but you could move it up and down on the deck where you needed to. If you needed it in the stern or needed it closer to the bow, depending on your target. It was maybe not a mobile device as we might think of it, but in its day, it was quite remarkable. The swivel gun was on board actually a British Revolutionary War ship, which ran aground nearby in a hurricane. And there's a great story there. Go to the Surf and Rescue website. There's a link to that in your handout as well, and learn a lot more about that. The Museum of Contemporary Art, MoCA, they call it there, is just 6 blocks off of the Virginia Beach waterfront. And they have regularly changing exhibitions featuring painting, sculpture, photography, and a glass, which I particularly find interesting, like the hanging sculpture there on the right. It's by a noted Tacoma, Washington-based artist, Dale Chihuly. And once you've seen some of this stuff, you start recognizing it instantly because it is such a distinctive style. They focus a lot on national and regional renowned or soon to be renowned artists. They really try to support the local community and up and coming artists. For perhaps a more laid back experience, Sandbridge Beach is a beautiful beach and secluded hideaway just 15 miles south of the main resort area of Virginia Beach, where you can escape the crowds. Stretching about 5 miles long along the coastline and featuring really just pristine sand dunes. You can see there on the left, it's just a breathtaking, lots of natural landscapes and very diverse range of wildlife and critters. Let's take a quick peek and see how diverse it really is here. And tranquil.
Oh, cool.
My video is shaking. Is it shaking for you as well?
Not terribly.
Very good.
It's cool.
It's drone video, but you can see it's a lovely place to just to be on the beach.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, it's beautiful.
Well, you kind of get the idea there. Oops. Oops. Hold on.
Sand Bridge.
Let me stop sharing for just a second so I can get the controls back here.
Mm-hmm.
And let me reshare.
Would you like me to? Okay, start screen share.
Yep.
Okay.
There we go. Oh, I'm having the same issue. Stand by just a second. I'm going to advance this.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I think can everyone see my next slide there that has the seagulls on the left?
Yes.
Great. And this is a little bit about actually the Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge. It's a lovely place to go. There are thousands of tundra swans, snow geese, ducks, and all sorts of waterfowl that visit Back Bay during the peak of winter migration. This is a major rest stop on the I-95 version for wildlife. You can see things year round, not just during migration, but it's a wonderful protected area. The refuge manages 10 wetland areas that provide food and shelter for the waterfowl, shorebirds, and all sorts of amphibious critters throughout the year. And they're able to control these areas with both natural water and their own filtration systems. So if the pollution is a little bit high, the animals and wildlife can really enjoy good food. And on the right-hand side, those loggerhead turtles, they come to this particular area in the summertime and breed. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. But like I said, there's things all around the year and that you can see. And on the 8 miles of scenic trails, they're mostly wooden or solidly flat dirt, so they're really easy to navigate. You don't feel like you're trooping through the wild there. And Visitor Center too is really good. They have interpretive programming, lots of good exhibits, and like most places like this, they're really anxious to answer any questions that you have. There's also fishing there, and for the more adventurous, canoeing and kayaking. They have a kayak launch there as well. And if you're getting a little peckish, check out Virginia Beach's farmers markets. There are seasonal ones and others are indoor and year round. At the main indoor farmers market, there's a family-owned butcher shop that's been in business for 30 years. There's a seafood market there. It doesn't get much fresher. You're right there on the water. Locally made ice cream, produce galore, a florist, a candy store, a full menu restaurant, home and garden specialty stores, and lots of artisans there with homemade soaps, candles, jewelry. There's also lots of honeys and jams. Check out the toe jam. No, it's not what you're thinking about, which is nothing that you want to spread on toast. Toe jam stands for tangerines, oranges, and elderberry juice. TOE, tangerine, oranges, and elderberry juice. Now, if this isn't a reason to get a hotel room there and a little kitchenette, I don't know what is. All this wonderful fresh food, particularly for me, the fresh seafood. I'd love to buy some crab cakes there and take them back to the hotel and just put them in a frying pan and wow, that's good fresh eating. Or feel free to bring along a little cooler with you and stop at the 7-Eleven, get some ice or fill a Ziploc bag with some ice at the hotel. Bring it home. And speaking of food there at the indoor farmers market that's there, coming up on June 18th, just a couple weeks from now, is their honey festival. So if you want to put that on your calendar, get out there. And by the way, on the lower left-hand corner, there's also a farmers market right downtown there that is seasonal, and it's called the Old Beach Farmers Market. So that just to distinguish that from the plain farmers market, and I put some links to those in the handouts as well. But now let's move on to Norfolk. Now again, you're not intended to read this map. It's blinding, it's blindingly small. But I want to give you an idea of this wonderful trail that goes through lots of areas in Norfolk, and is a great secret key to what's to see and do there, and a good way to get oriented on a self-guided walking tour through about 400 years of Norfolk and early American history. There's an emphasis on architectural styles and local historical context on the tour, like the old Selden Arcade, an old shopping arcade, which was the kind of the 1930s version of a shopping mall. But it's now artist studios and galleries, which are really fun to explore. There's also old churches and banks that have been refurbished along the way. It's a wonderful way, this Cannonball Trail, to get oriented to the city. It takes about 2 hours to stroll around. Longer, of course, if you pop into some of the sites that are open to the public, and a good bit longer if you're like me and start hitting the shops and having a little snack along the way. But let's take a closer look at a couple of the things on that Cannonball Trail. The Moses Myers House. This is the oldest Jewish home open to the public as a museum. It was home to 5 generations of the Myers family, the first permanent Jewish American residents in the Norfolk area. They lived here from about 1795 to 1931, quite a long time to have a home there. Moses Myers himself, the patriarch, was one of the first millionaires in the United States, an amazing amount of money in the early 1800s, a millionaire there, and built this quite large home, as you can see from the photo on the left. He earned the family wealth in the import-export business in the early days, and then parlayed that wealth into investments in transportation. It's in the MBA speak, it's called a vertical expansion. And by getting transportation hooked up with his import-export trade, he could really enhance his income there. And his family businesses also contributed significantly to the reconstruction of Norfolk after the Civil War. So he made a few shekels there along the way as well. He was also very active, the whole family was, in local government and patronizing the theater and arts. And their contributions were not just economic but also very, very forward thinking in social activism in the day, and lots of placards and information that make that clear what their role was. Their home, now restored to reflect its 19th century appearance, is now a museum just chock-a-block with original furnishings, and that's pretty rare in the days of restored homes. Lots of stuff is there is original, including portraits of the patriarch. There you see in the upper right-hand corner um, by Gilbert Stuart, and just a really interesting place to visit. And some of those original furnishings included on the left a mahogany dining table. It's just beautiful. And on the right hand side in the parlor there, even the sheet music that's on the music stand in front of the harp is original. Just really, really beautiful. They're guided tours by appointment, or you can do a self-guided tour. The docents are always very helpful and close by. And two additional points, this is really a first-class museum, and it's affiliated with the Chrysler Museum, those car folks. And I think for those of you who saw the Richmond presentation last month, they also have a large museum in Richmond. No, it's in Norfolk here as well. I take that back. There is a lot of Chrysler money in this area, and this Moses Myers house is affiliated with them as well. So it makes it really a first-class experience. And the gardens out back are lovely as well, and they are maintained by the Garden Club of Norfolk. Just around the corner from that location is another house tour that you might enjoy, but of a different era. This one is the Hunter House, and it's a Victorian museum and restored in the interior to Victorian times. Similar to the Moses Myers house, it's lots of family furniture, decorative objects, but of a different era. Only 2 generations of the family lived here. The patriarchs and their 3 children there you see to the right. But I love that little SCP photograph. None of those 3 children married or had children of their own, so that the dynasty died out, but the home remarkably stayed in that family its whole time and was lived in by that family. The children were born in the 1800s, and several of them survived to the 1950s. They saw a lot in their lifetime. The son became a medical doctor, and some of his instruments are there and on exhibit. You can see them on the left there. And you can do a tour of the 2 floors of the home and see this really charming setup. It's a very homey museum experience I think you'll enjoy. And also consider pre-registering for some special events that they have. They have a murder mystery evening and regular afternoon teas with the usual suspects, the tea sandwiches, the scones, and of course tea. But particularly if you've got like a rainy day, or you don't want to stay in and watch some more DVDs at night, go to the murder mystery evening. I think that would be a lot of fun. And one last site I want to mention in this area is the MacArthur Memorial, which doesn't just cover the era for which most of us remember his "I shall return" farewell in the Philippines, but the museum also pays tribute to all military who served in the wars from the Civil War to the Korean conflict. There are 3 main parts to the complex. There's a research center, which is only open to researchers by appointment. The second is a visitors center, which has several exhibit areas that include his staff car there on the right-hand side, and a World War II Jeep. And there's a great video there, about 25 minutes long, very, very thorough, but also very entertaining. And for 25 minutes to sit in a nice, cool, air-conditioned place and put your dogs up for a little bit, yeah, I highly recommend the video as well. But the third part is what was some very, very interesting to me, is a memorial area which has 9 galleries situated around a rotunda under which Douglas MacArthur and his wife Jean are buried. That's the photo on the left there. The galleries on 2 different stories tell the story of his life and times, with wonderful details such as the resume of his military career etched on the rotunda wall, family photos, a life-size model of World War I trench warfare, and maps, which always interest me. There's also personal items such as the signature pipe and aviator glasses. And for the photo there on the right, who knew that Douglas MacArthur was a member of the Masons, complete with his own fez there on the display. They also have great online resources there, including an archive of nose art that was on the noses of warplanes, wartime aircraft. Several of the photos are from MacArthur's personal collection of nose art photos. So check that out as well. And there's a link to that in your handout as well. Now that you've been inside all these houses and museums, how about a breath of fresh air? In 1938, as part of the Depression area WPA efforts, this now 175-acre garden has been filled with thousands of blooming flowers and plants, with more than 60 different themed parks or park areas, little separate small gardens. Several gardens are arranged by season. So regardless of the time of the year, you don't have to tramp all over, literally and figuratively, God's green acre, trying to see something that's in bloom. They've kind of planted these and arranged them so you can see lots of stuff that is in bloom for whatever season that you're visiting. And as you can see from the kind of pale aqua shades along these edges here, it's on kind of a peninsula of land, so there's water all around, which kind of really makes it even more peaceful and tranquil. I always find water has that effect for me. And an unusual aspect of the gardens of the 11 statues of famous artists, Rembrandt, Leonardo da Vinci, all made by one sculptor and spread around a lovely grassy space. As you can see in the photo on the left, they just kind of line the space with classical beauty. Moses Ezekiel was the sculptor, and he was commissioned in 1879 to create these for William Wilson Corcoran, founder of the Corcoran Gallery in Washington, D.C. They were originally intended to be set in second-story niches at the Corcoran, but they never quite made it there. Now, I have a thing for butterflies, and apparently so do the folks here. There's both a butterfly garden and a butterfly house as well. And in the upper right-hand corner, for you beer lovers, there's a grain and hop garden. That's a close-up of some hops there. And if the sun and busy flowers are getting, just to be a little bit too much for you, try a tranquil walk in the enchanted forest there, shown in the lower right. It's very, very peaceful. And one of the things I really admire about the mission of the Botanical Gardens is their deep commitment to home gardeners. They have a special garden of all American selections, plants and flowers that have been tested for really hearty garden performance, and they really will do well almost anywhere, and particularly in this area. There's different varieties of zinnias, tomatoes, cabbages, kale, and this is what I need. I can kill a cactus at 10 paces. I'm horrible with plants, but this is a selection of things that you can see in a garden and say, I can do that. I can grow that. And they're especially designed in this garden for things that are that you can kind of mentally take away and say, I could do that, and I'm gonna give it a shot. And a little bit more in terms of their outreach, their events calendar is packed. I highly recommend taking a look at that if you're going to be down in the area. You can drop in for yoga in the gardens on Wednesday mornings. They have regular digital photography events, do-it-yourself suet theater workshops. There's always something fun and interesting. So you'll pop in here for just something different to do when you're at the beach. Just something instead of, well, okay, do we want to get our towels sandy at this location or that location? Something a little different. You're still outside enjoying the sunshine, and there are 60 different gardens. Let's take a quick peek at one of them. Let me backtrack this just a little bit here. This is their Japanese garden.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Ah. Again, you get the idea. You can follow a little more later, but to kind of get back inside for a little bit. The Chrysler Museum, which I mentioned earlier, I knew it was in here somewhere. I couldn't exactly remember it. Sometimes at the last minute, I reshuffle these. And but here I want to talk about this Chrysler Museum. It used to be the Norfolk Museum of Arts and Sciences, but when Walter and Jean Chrysler, son and daughter-in-law of the founder of Chrysler Corporation, generously decided to donate thousands of works of art from their personal collection to the museum, they embarked on a really powerful private-public partnership from which we all benefit today. Among the collection are works from almost every continent and era, from pre-Columbian art to pop art and contemporary art. French and American Impressionism are particularly well represented. For example, the Child of Assam you see there in the center. And I really appreciate the 17th century wood carving on the right of John the Baptist. The detail is just amazing. They don't know who did it, but it is just remarkable. And so much art in wood has been lost. It's just wonderful to see it so beautiful and so preserved. And on the far left there, they have a great selection of African-American and Asian art and Pacific art. And this particular one is African art, and it's a carved hippo tooth. Just an example of the great variety that they have there. But one of their big claims to fame that's really unusual about this is their huge glass collection. The glass galleries, which take up almost the entire first floor of the museum, house their 10,000 piece collection of the covers over 3,000 years of glass working, including some of my favorites, Tiffany, and of course the Chihuly that we've seen earlier. It's so distinctive. And it's not just about the, ooh, look at the pretty things. They also are really focused on making sure the visitor can understand the processes and the science a little bit behind glassmaking as an art form and as a production technique. The photo on the top left there shows how different chemicals are added to the glass to create different colors. And they also have below that, they show how pressing different objects into the molten glass creates different textures. Really very interesting. They also have a glass studio where you can see demonstrations of different glass making techniques, including glass blowing. And you can even sign up in advance, again, a fun thing to do, to make something of your own, a paperweight and lots of different other things that you can do to actually be hands-on and create something. And for our last location, let's take a look, moving back a little bit farther north towards home, Hampton Roads, or Hampton. It's referred to kind of both ways. The Virginia Air and Space Center is the official visitor center to NASA's Langley Research Center. There's plenty here to see if you're a fan of flight and space. There's historic aircraft suspended from a 94-foot ceiling, hands-on simulators, IMAX films, and more than 100 historic aeronautic and space exploration exhibits, including moon rocks. There's all sorts of space vehicles from the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs including the exact lunar excursion model, the LEM, that Neil Armstrong used when he trained here, not the one, of course, that went up, to the moon, but the one he trained on is there. Kind of cool. And an important part of the Langley legacy is the women mathematicians that were part of the early space program, as depicted in the book and movie Hidden Figures. There's a salute to these ladies here too, very, very important figures in all of history, and particularly space and aviation. There's a new area there that just opened up at the Space Center there. I don't have a photograph of it here, but it's called Be the Astronaut, aimed at building a broader understanding of the concepts that make spaceflight possible. And simulators, and just a great way to understand a little bit more of the physics and motion of actually flight, which I thought was very interesting there. And on the right-hand side, even the vending machines are shaped like little space. This one kind of looks like the space shuttle there, but they really put a lot of thought into it, even in the commercialization of the vending machines. Here's just a quick overview.
For NASA Langley Research Center, featuring interactive features.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you don't need to call them. But I do just want to say, although that ad is somewhat targeted at families, there's really a lot that is of interest to adults. But of course, the commercial wants to hook the families, because if you hook mom and dad about the kids, you've got instantly a lot more admissions coming in. So I encourage you to enjoy that. Another place local here in the Hampton area is Hampton University, a historical Black university, and it was established during the Civil War, or right after the Civil War in 1868, whose mission was to promote education for freed men, not women just yet, but for freed men. Radically, a key part of the education was mandated to include the arts. That was not a very popular thing to do at the universities in their day. That was mostly focused on science and Latin, but not so much the arts. So it's very, very unusual. And this was the first museum to operate in Virginia and the oldest African-American museum in the country. Their rich collection contains works by famous African-American painters over the decades, from Henry O. Tanner's, I love that, the banjo lesson on the left, very charming there. And that's a picture of the university museum there in the center, and a more modern take there, Profile in Blue on the far right by Ron Adams. But African-American art is only part of the story there. They have over 9,000 items of traditional and contemporary African-American, Native American, and Pacific Island art, including sculptures like the Spotted Wing on the left, which mimics traditional European images of the Madonna until you look very closely and you can see there's a feather in her hair. So there's some images and icons that are universal and cross cultures, which I appreciate. There's also oodles of decorative arts here too. You can see in the center, Native American baskets, and on the far right there, headdresses from the Belgian Congo, and really a lot more, and a little bit more I wanted to tell you about. Upstairs on the second floor, there's some purely historical objects, such as the Liberty Pen. there, I've highlighted in the lower left-hand corner. It was the pen used by President Abraham Lincoln to sign the first of the 3 acts of emancipation in 1862. The act declared the slaves of Washington, D.C. free. Now, after all this touring and schlepping around and through the gardens and across the beach and in and out of homes, you might be pretty thirsty. And we won't exactly be able to slake that thirst here tonight, but if you're in the area there, I want to give you a teaser of one of the things that's really become very, very big in this area, and that's breweries. In just the 3 areas we've talked about today, the Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, and Norfolk, which is kind of circled there in the right in red, just in that area alone that we're talking about here, there are 33 different breweries. This map shows all of Virginia, but just in our area alone here, 33 breweries. So you can you can do a whole week doing just that. And a couple events that you might want to take note of on July 30th. There's a beer, bourbon, and barbecue festival in Richmond, which is kind of on your way here, a little bit farther north. Beer, bourbon, and barbecue. That's a pretty powerful combination. And in Virginia Beach itself, right here, is a craft brew festival on August 27th. Again, there's links for those in your handout. So on that kind of happy hour note, which I'm going to just wind up here and ask if you have any questions on what we've talked about, or comments, things you would like to share.
I'm still writing.
Okay.
So Barbara, we used to go down to Virginia Beach every year in September. In the, I guess it was the 70s up until the 80s, when the kids went to school in September. When I saw the drone flying over, I'm assuming that was like North Virginia Beach. There was the Virginia Beach that we would go to. It just didn't have all those new buildings. So have they ripped down all of the older buildings and put in those new condos and things? Or was it just, I wasn't seeing close enough to the ground to recognize anything?
No, that was actually from kind of way South Virginia Beach. That's in the area where that park was, the Sand Ridge Park. It's about 15 miles, no, about 8 miles, about 15 minutes south of Virginia Beach. It's a wildlife refuge.
Okay.
At least along those beach areas.
Yeah, see, I don't
that
remember anything like that being there. I remember it being not as commercial as Ocean City, but there was more of the, beach shops and things like that. So has the center of activity, I guess is what I'm asking, shifted north or south, or is it still pretty much the same?
I don't have a lot of comparisons. I didn't go there a lot back in the 70s. I was still kind of doing some Ocean City stuff.
Yeah.
I've only not recently discovered, maybe over the past 15 years or so, have been going to Virginia Beach, and I really prefer that southern area. I like the hotels on Virginia Beach. I love waking up to that sound. I love waking up to that smell, and I like staying up on. I don't like the idea of high rises because the overdevelopment of these areas kind of makes me a little queasy. But if I can get on like the 6th floor, where it's kind of above, some maybe distracting noises, but you can still get the smell and sights and sounds. It's a lovely area.
The Shriners used to do a parade every year when we were down there. And the kids just loved it. And, of course, the Shriners paid a lot of attention to any kids sitting on the curb. They always came over with the balloons and the tricks and everything.
I'm sure one of the things that to promote tourism, that almost every weekend, if you click on some of the links there for the Norfolk tourism or the Virginia Beach Tourism to attract tourists. Almost every weekend there's a something or other festival, whether
Yeah.
it's the honey festival or it's the beer, bourbon, and barbecue. It's something, and they really do make an effort to bring thoughtful entertainment, performance art, and commercial things to the area.
How about like Southern cuisine? Is there like someplace that you'd say, oh, the best grits, or, the best barbecue, or ham, or what?
To be quite honest,
Seafood.
well, I hate grits. Ugh.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Oh,
We
there's
used-
something about the texture I just can't do. But there is one restaurant, and I haven't been down to Virginia Beach for probably, with COVID, I haven't been down there since the onset of COVID. But there was one restaurant I have just loved, and fellow Poolsvillian and Corey, you may remember Virginia Crute.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, I don't know if Virginia Crute sadly passed away last April.
Oh, I didn't know
yeah.
that.
Yes, and her husband predeceased her by about a year. But Virginia Crute, go to this restaurant in Virginia Crute's memory. It's called Taw Togs, TAUTOGS, and I put it in the chat box. Right on the Virginia Beach, maybe a block and a half. It's not a big fancy restaurant. It's in an old house.
Oh,
The chairs are kind of jammed together. They try to accommodate as many people because it's very popular. Oh my goodness.
So what
Great seafood.
what was Virginia's connection to it?
She and her husband went there a couple of times. They enjoyed Virginia Beach mightily with their family, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
And she said, oh, one time when I was going down there, you must go to Taw Togs. I'm like, okay. And now I make it a point to go.
We used to go for the seafood. The seafood was incredible.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? It doesn't get any fresher. My family's originally from Maine, and I don't eat lobster unless I am north of Boston. It's
Yeah.
just not worth it.
Me too.
It's just not worth it. But if you're going to Virginia Beach, get the crab cakes. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that part of the state do anything with peanuts in particular? Like, I know as you're like leaving Virginia, like going towards North Carolina, you'll run into the peanut people. But
yeah. I don't think it quite settles in Virginia.
Okay.
I think that's more of a Carolina thing, and Georgia, particularly the boiled peanuts.
okay. All right. Or ham, is that another?
Yes,
thing with people?
yes. They do have a lot of
Virginia
wonderful.
ham.
Yes,
Yeah.
which is that kind of dried, smoked. Some of it almost gets toward the beef jerky texture if it's overdone a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's such good flavor, the smokiness of it. A lot of that around that area as well, and a lot of grits. There's a wonderful restaurant in Richmond. I think I mentioned last time we were on a Spoonbread Bistro, which has I understand wonderful grits. My friend Leslie was there with me on a trip, and she ordered them. Cheddar cheese was mixed in with the grits, and she was just raving about them. I was trying to look the other way.
To each his own, Miss
Yes.
Paulson.
Yes. Any other questions, comments, concerns, issues?
No, you've given me a lot to think about. I feel like I have to go make a trip to Virginia Beach. Might
Yeah,
even
I
go
just want to
to
say I had no
market.
idea there was that much there. I
Yeah,
really,
had
This
know
was really
that yet.
enlightening. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, we drove down there and just drove through Hampton Roads, drove through Norfolk.
Yeah, you just
you
drive
know,
through those
Just
places to
drive
get where you're
through and,
going.
and
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
don't stop and,
Yep.
it's,
Yeah,
it's,
right? It's a pass through. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
On the way to
No idea.
somewhere else. Yeah.
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 And I always felt kind of sorry for my friends who got stationed in Norfolk because I was like, nothing to do there.
Now we know.
Now we know differently, right?
Yeah.
The
Well, this was
secret
good.
is
Thank
out.
you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Well,
And
this-
we wouldn't have known without you. So
Yeah,
that's
thank you
true.
for coming and telling us all about it.
I'm happy to do so. And this kind of theme off the beaten path is my shtick.
Yeah.
Whenever I do a presentation about about Paris, I never talk about the Louvre. I never talk about the Musée d'Orsay. I talk about the Victor Hugo Museum,
Oh, okay.
where you can see the bed that he slept in. You can see the books that he read. It just
Yeah.
it's the things that aren't always on everyone's A list, but maybe on their B or C or D list that is off the beaten path. It's just my preference. It's just what I do and what I choose to share. I'm glad I could share it with you tonight.
Yeah,
And-
you'll have to do Paris. We might have to do a comparison.